December 16, 2025. Montgomery, Alabama. Bowl season doesn't always roar out of the gate, but this one doesn't feel like background noise. This game sits right in the middle of two campuses, two identities, and two teams that both finished the season at 8-5 with something left unsaid. Troy versus Jacksonville State in the IS-4's Salute to Veterans Bowl is not about pageantry. It's about pressure, matchups, and whether strengths can overpower weaknesses when everything is laid bare. When you strip away logos and records, what's left is one of the clearest stylistic clashes on the board, and those are the games that quietly shape narratives long after bowl season fades. Game 1. Troy versus Jacksonville State. Troy arrives here as the Sun Belt West champion, finishing the regular season at 8-5 with a 6-2 conference record before falling 31-14 to James Madison in the Sun Belt Championship game. Jacksonville State mirrors that 8-5 overall mark, but their path came through Conference USA, where they posted a 7-1 conference record before losing 19-15 to Kennesaw State in their conference title game. Same records, different roads, different identities. This game revolves around how those identities collide, starting with the quarterbacks. For Troy, Goose Crowder took over the offense down the stretch and closed the season as the starting quarterback across 7 games, throwing for 1,314 yards and 11 touchdowns. His return for the Sun Belt title game came after missing time, but his status here is listed as questionable. That uncertainty matters, especially when paired with the absence of Troy's top rusher. Tay Meadows, who produced 695 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns, will not be available after entering the transfer portal. Troy's ground game, which averaged 98.8 rushing yards per game, now leans on backups while the quarterback situation remains cloudy. On the other sideline, Jacksonville State brings continuity. Caden Creel finished as the leading passer with 1,341 yards and 8 passing touchdowns, but his impact goes far beyond the air. Creel added 1,085 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns, forming one half of a backfield that defines the Gamecocks' season. The other half is Cam Cook, who powered the offense with 1,659 rushing yards and 16 touchdowns. Together, they give Jacksonville State 2 1,000-yard rushers and fuel a rushing attack that averages 258 rushing yards per game. That ground dominance runs directly into Troy's most vulnerable defensive trait. The Trojans allow around 192 rushing yards per game, placing them in the low 100 teams nationally in that category. The Sun Belt Championship loss to James Madison put that issue under a spotlight, as Troy surrendered 318 rushing yards on 42 carries, a figure that worked out to 7.6 yards per attempt. When a defense bleeds yardage at that rate, it struggles to get off the field, and against a team that runs more often than it throws, those struggles compound. Jacksonville State's offensive identity is unapologetically run-heavy. They prefer long rushing sequences, using Cook and Creel from multiple angles, leaning on defenses until cracks appear. Each rushing first down removes approximately 30 to 40 seconds from the clock, shrinking the total number of possessions and shifting control toward time of possession and field position. That approach matters even more in a bowl environment where rhythm and familiarity often outweigh explosiveness. Troy's offense tells a more complicated story. On paper, the Trojans averaged 24.5 points and 380.3 total yards per game, numbers that suggest balance. But the finishing has been inconsistent. Troy has scored 14 points or fewer in 3 of its last 5 games, struggling to convert movement between the 20s into touchdowns in the red zone. Their own rushing production, sitting at 98.8 yards per game, hasn't consistently helped them stay ahead of the chains or close out long drives. Defensively, Jacksonville State allows 26.2 points and 391.2 yards per game, numbers that raise concerns about explosiveness and breakdowns. But context matters. The opponent here is a Troy offense that has stalled late in drives and enters the game without its top rusher and with a quarterback listed as questionable. Jacksonville State, meanwhile, expects to have most of its key pieces available, including both Cam Cook and Caden Creel. From a trend perspective, Troy carries surface-level appeal. The Trojans have covered in 8 of their last 10 games and sit at 9-4 against the spread this season. Their games have also leaned toward higher scoring, with the total going over in each of their last 5 games, in 5 of their last 6 against Conference USA teams, and in 7 of their last 8 games played on a Tuesday. Those trends reflect how markets often remember recent results. But styles can override trends. Jacksonville State's rushing attack owns a top 10 profile and aligns almost perfectly with Troy's weakest defensive area. When the underdog's strength runs straight into the favorite's vulnerability, the game's script tilts. Jacksonville State's ability to control tempo, shorten the game, and limit total drives introduces a natural ceiling on scoring, even against a defense that has allowed yardage. This is where the analytical lean takes shape. The side perspective points toward Jacksonville State staying inside the number and potentially dictating the terms of the game as underdogs, using their ground game to wear down Troy's front and control possession. The total perspective leans in the opposite direction of Troy's recent overs, favoring a slower, more methodical game where long drives, stalled red zone possessions, and clock-draining runs keep scoring in check. Viewed together, the scenario aligns. Jacksonville State pounding the ground, reducing possessions, and forcing Troy to execute efficiently without its top rusher creates a narrow margin. In that environment, Jacksonville State covering the spread as underdogs emerges as the side lean, while the expectation of fewer total drives and inconsistent finishing supports an under the projected total outlook. Before you go, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any breakdowns like this as bowl season unfolds. If you appreciate deep analysis that goes beyond surface-level narratives and actually explains why games tilt the way they do, drop a like on this video. It helps the channel more than you know. And now I want to hear from you. Do you see this matchup playing out the same way, or is there a key detail you think flips the script? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Every perspective adds to the conversation. This is Beyond the Box Score, where the numbers tell the story and the details decide the outcome.